Welcome back, everyone. My name is Manuel, and I'm honored to lead you through the second half of the day. We will start with our next big section, which is blockchain in industry. And we will start with Dr. Harry Behrens from bloXmove. And he will talk about how DLT will change the mobility sector. So enjoy it. Welcome, Harry. Talk about how DLT will change the mobility sector. So enjoy it. Welcome, Harry.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Am I heard? Yes. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I have a very strong delay. I hear myself with 2 seconds delay.
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. Could you
sorry, it's very disconcerting. I hear myself.
Could you please mute
with 3 seconds delay? I cannot speak like this.
Could you please mute the stream?
Sorry, it's very disconcerting. I hear myself.
Could you please mute
3 seconds delay? I cannot speak like this.
Could you please mute the stream? Something is on your browser on, and you just need the Zoom.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
So, okay, now we got this. Yes. So today I'll try to present how decentralized technologies, such as blockchain, such as decentralized identifiers, most of all, such as IoT, are basically at the core of a total disruption of how people think of transport, human transport. So what used to be the automotive industry is now becoming the mobility industry, and more or less it's actually developing specifically towards mobility as a service. And there's a number of reasons for it, which lie in a trend, which in the automotive industry, it was the big word 2-3 years ago, but it still holds very, very true. These trends are summarized under CASE or cases or phases, which is a set of mega trends that basically converge together and create a completely new environment within which we have to rethink the way we organize transport. And at the same time, there's a different convergence, which is a convergence of technologies that makes a number of things possible now that were maybe thinkable, Jules Verne style, in the past, but they were not realistically doable. And these technologies are decentralized technologies such as blockchain, decentralized identifiers, the very high sophistication of modern cryptographic protocols, the very high scalability of cloud-based hosting of software, and last but not least, the increasing intelligence and the increasing interconnectedness of devices, IoT. So, and I'll start with this mega trend called CASE, where the C stands for connectivity, connected vehicles, the car being part of the internet, the car being a rolling computer, and in our case, what I'll try to get towards to is the car being actually a rolling blockchain client with a full digital identity by which it is identified, by which it is linked to its vehicle title, by which it is linked to its owner, and most of all, by which it can sign data which is used for billing records, positioning, and management in a way that is not only fully automated, but that is also completely tamper-proof. So that's the C in CASE, and that creates a completely new way of being able to steer mobility and transport, because now you're essentially dealing with a bunch of rolling edge computers from a software perspective. Then autonomous driving, there's on the passenger car, the hype is a little bit flattened. So people tend to less talk about autonomous passenger cars. It's more automated, half automated. I prefer the word guided automated. Guided automated, the simplest way to imagine it is, think of a tram, which is driving through cities. It should be straightforward. It's quite easy, relatively speaking, to automate that, especially if you basically have that vehicle drive driverless, yes, Autonomous, yes, but autonomous in the sense that it's part of the network but to which it belongs, and the network more or less tells it how to drive, when to stop, which speed, which route to take, etc. So I believe in the urban space, we're going to see this hybrid, which I tend to call guided autonomous driving, which again revolutionizes the way you calculate your business case. Obviously, personnel is a big part of any business case in mobility. It also provides completely increased flexibility, because the moment you have autonomously driving vehicles, you're dispositioning. The start, come here, I need the car here and then at that point in time, all of a sudden becomes something that you don't need to think about anymore, because you just program the car to be there at that point in time. Then you arrive and the car should be there. So you don't need to arrange pickup and all of that. So that is one of these incredible mind-boggling transitions, which will completely change the way we think about mobility, which used to be, I park my car here and I need to go find it again. This is now different, especially if I can use any car, because it'll be more and more, I use all mobility as a service available within the city I'm working in, but I own none. Or maybe, yes, I own my luxury or my old timer, but I own it for kicks, I own it for joy. I don't own it out of practical reasons. And of course, the whole thing that we've seen again and again and again and again, and it manifests itself in platform economics, huge scalable service delivery platforms. Software is eating the world. And there is a big trend, and I am very worried that especially industrial countries like Germany is one, tend to underestimate it. There's a lot of companies out there in Germany that produce incredibly good physical goods, machinery, half-intelligent machine engineering products, incredibly good stuff. And most of them still think this is a product. We don't need to worry about this digital software stuff. We have something real here, so we can basically ignore this, fancy high-tech digital blah, blah, blah. But if you look at more and more, even if you produce a big machine, a printing machine, a robot, a truck, you end up not selling the product anymore. You end up by way of leasing, then subscription, then pay per use. You end up providing the product, yes, the machine, yes, but the customer is not buying the full machine anymore, less and less. They're not willing to put it on their books anymore, but rather they prefer, I pay for when I use it, and if I don't use it, I don't pay, somebody else can use it. So it's a convergence of pay per use and sharing, but sharing on the business to business level. And that's another big, big trend which is coming. And why this is so relevant, especially for countries like Germany, is because it will affect all the heavy machinery, the Maschinenbau in Germany. I foresee that in not more than 10 years, there will be a major trend where the growth curve of machines being brought to market is not going to be in the you buy my machine, you lease my machine through a manufacturing lease or the similar, but rather there's going to be special purpose vehicles that basically fund themselves through tokenization, very possibly. They operate these machines, and whoever wants to use them just pays per use. The perfect example are 3D printers or printing machines in general, because that good, what they do is so commoditized that you can very easily basically make it applicable to many, many different users that need it on demand. So, and all of that is essentially, it's called servitization in the artificial way of creating new buzzwords. Servitization stands for you have a product, a machine, a physical good, but you're not selling it as a machine anymore. You're delivering it as software as a service, machine as a service. So that's another huge trend which is disrupting the way we think in industry and which is disrupting the way we need to structure our value chain. And last but not least, but quite obvious, in the electric industry, in the vehicle industry, of course, the whole electrification, where all of a sudden, not only do we have cars that are electric now, which is kind of straightforward, but you got this completely new part of highly decentralized infrastructure coming in, charging stations. And one fact about the charging stations is the factor of fueling stations based on gasoline to the factor of fueling stations based on electricity is 1 to several hundred. So physically speaking, on the geography, for each gas station out there, you will need hundreds of charging stations. And that, by its nature, brings a highly decentralized nature of these charging points. So, and here also, because all of these charging stations by now are very intelligent machineries, they're equipped with full controllers, they're network controlled, they have serial numbers, which is the core, the DNA of identity. So here again, we will see that digital identities and decentralized processing will come with it, and you will have this interaction all of a sudden between the power grid on the one side and the mobility world. Power meets mobility. So all these trends together have completely now shifted long-term. The curve is still in the flat part of the S, but the phase transition is coming. Nobody can tell you it's coming tomorrow in 2 years. My personal bet is it's less than 5 years when the first regions will have that phase transition. And within 10 years, we will talk about this and say, how could we miss this? So those are the trends that we're dealing with. Basically, servitization, complete digitization, complete interconnectedness, and on many, many layers, increasing decentralization, fragmentation of the whole service delivery, of the business entities that are involved, etc. So this now is essentially the very big, very general, but if anybody here is in here from the automotive industry or from the captive finance arm of the automotive industry, you will recognize this process meta chart as also being applicable to your company. It applies basically to the automotive lifecycle. And I'm focusing now on everything that happens after the car has been financed or sold the first time. So not the production, not the distribution, but the mobility, the after sales, the repayment factors. So what we generally call the life cycle of the vehicle. And in this life cycle of the vehicle, again, which now operates under these new assumptions, which I just tried to describe through this case scenario, how do we now manage the financial life cycle of this? Because these trends, the pay-per-use on the one side, the increasing automation, the increasing fragmentation will lead to the demand that we are able to account, to steer, to direct, to provide access for vehicles, for charging stations, for parking stations, for companies in a fully dynamic manner. And as we all know in the industry, the margins in all of this are not big, which means if you have an operating model that is based on manual operations, on 4I principles, on manual reconciliation, on Excel being sent from A to B, telephone calls telling me I can't read your Excel, then obviously your business model will break, even though theoretically it works, because you're going to drown on the cost side of your business case. Long story short, that is where the software part of case comes in, the S. This needs to be hyper-automated. If you cannot hyper-automate it, you can simply not be competitive. That is what we've seen again and again in the platform business. The hyper-aggregators, they're actually hyper-automators. None of the big platform operators that you know have manual operations in the background. That is why they were so efficient. That is why they can leverage their volume for data management, for AI, for machine learning to continuously optimize themselves. So if you want to be competitive in this new world of connected, autonomous, driven and shared by software, electric vehicles, you do need to have the ambition and the very clear goal to be able to hyper-automate all of the service lifecycle. So this is a service lifecycle. As now comes the very short pitch to which company I am now representing, bloXmove. We just basically did a management buyout of the Daimler Mobility blockchain platform, and we're now basically taking it into what's called bloXmove. And that is essentially what used to be called the Daimler Mobility blockchain platform. That's enough now for the pitch for my own company. Relevant here is it's a blockchain platform that is centered around the vehicle lifecycle. And the vehicle lifecycle goes between business units, companies that hold the car pool, etc., the car owner, which can be fleets or personal car owners, the dealerships, the workshops, more and more half-automated diagnostics machine. The TÜV has brought out an incredible piece of hardware, which is a total hit worldwide. It's called the TÜV Twinner, which basically you drive the car into, and it analyzes it based on AI fully automatically and tells you what needs repair and how much it'll cost roughly. So this is part of the new service lifecycle around the vehicle. And now let's bring all of this together. I mean, all of this basically very broadly sketched what are the problems here, what's the scenario. Now, the last 3 minutes, how do you go about fixing this? Well, you have vehicles that are obviously part. You have machines. You have the vehicle, which can be thought of as a machine. You have the charging stations, which can be thought of as a machine. The parking space actually in its own way is a machine in the sense it has an identity, it has to give you access, and some parts it actually has a door that opens or closes. So you got devices which need identity. You need to identify them tamper-proof. They need to send you data tamper-proof, and they need to ideally be actually blockchain clients based on these identities, all based on the so-called DID protocols, that they can basically store immutable data on this ledger of blockchain. They will always belong to a company, and this is these nodes, which again needs an identity. It's the fleet owner or it's the charging aggregator here. And as the charging operation happens, this should be then fully automatic, where charging stations with its identity tells mothership, there's a vehicle just docked in. That vehicle is qualified according to the pre-qualification for XYZ. It has an identity which we can track down to that vehicle title document, ultimately the number plate, the holder, and the VIN. And it belongs currently to the current owner that is responsible for actually paying the electricity that this vehicle will now receive. Now, all of this fully automated, based on identities, based on verified transactions, based on the digital signatures that confirm all of this, then become part of a smart contract layer. And smart contracts are very well positioned to do this. They're essentially tamper-proof, highly secure, embedded pieces of software. And they are perfect to execute the confirmation of these individual transactions. And once you got that, you have the parties involved fully identified. You have the agreement and the consent between them fully legitimized based on digital signatures where each party has confirmed and countersigned whatever the deal or the transaction is. And you have billing records that come from one device or the other device, and that device is identified and certified, so you know those billing records, X kilowatt per hour or X kilometers, is actually correct. You take that, and then it should be straightforward how to convert that into a valid invoice, a liability, which you can book into the distributed, and I prefer the word shared ledger, which all the participants hold together, which holds the total single point of truth on the mutual liabilities and invoices and accounts receivable and accounts payable that exist at any point in time, in real time, among all of these operators. Then you have now completed the circle in the sense that all of your transaction management, including the physical truth as confirmed by the identities and the certification, down to the booking, to the book money, is now always in sync and fully automated in such a fragmented network. And the only thing that's missing, and this is where the bank-regulated companies need to come in, is the payment gateway, where you basically transform these ledger side liabilities into euro or fiat currency. Call it IBAN to ledger, call it cash to ledger, the layer where the regulated banking fiat system will then interact with the very seamless, very frictionless blockchain with identity layer, where all of this gets handled seamlessly based on end-to-end digital software. So just on time, I herewith finish the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.